overconfidence may be one of the most fraudulent and misleading behaviors that we partake in. Overconfidence leads to so much disagreement and erroneous belief that everyone should understand what it is and how to avoid it. The thing about overconfidence is that there's no correlation with it and validity. It doesn't matter how confident you are about your belief or anybody else. It has no correlation with validity at all. Overconfidence really relies and comes from a coherent story that's been developed in your brain, and oftentimes is built on the foundation of limited knowledge. And this is the worst type of overconfidence that exists. A quote by Neil deGrasse Tyson really sums it up very well, what overconfidence is and how bad it can be to our thinking. It reads, "One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right, but not enough about the subject to know you're wrong." Overconfidence is in the first half of this quote here, when he says that one of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right. So you know enough about that specific topic to where you feel confident in your belief, but in reality, you do not know enough at all. And the more you learn, the more you will see that you're wrong. In Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, he presents a real-world example of this with clinicians. And the clinicians who were completely certain of a diagnosis were wrong 40% of the time, when the clinicians who put the one right below it, which were not completely certain but pretty confident, were only wrong 12% of the time. This is pretty crazy coming from a discipline, clinicians, doctors who are very well-trained, well-informed, extremely educated people, but just the fact that the basic knowledge of logic isn't there. They fall into these behaviors that really aren't necessary. So the next thing is, how do we avoid this? How can we avoid overconfidence? The first and most important thing is to understand that 100% certainty is not real when it comes to anything that's even close to controversial. Let's say, you can pick the most cookie cutter controversial topics there are. Let's say abortion. You cannot be 100% certain of your belief. You can be 99.999 whatever. You can't be 100% certain. There's so many people that disagree. Such a hot, debated topic. You can't possibly just say, oh, I'm 100% certain that my perspective is correct, when there are quite possibly millions of perspectives on something like that. The next thing is to be humble in your beliefs and always be open to new information. We can see in that Neil deGrasse Tyson quote that I read earlier, maybe you will learn enough information so one day you can look back and say, wow, now I know that I'm wrong. Another thing to keep in mind that Daniel Kahneman mentions in his book is that an unbiased appreciation of uncertainty is the cornerstone of rationality. Irrationality really stems from the fact that people don't like uncertainty. You become uncertain about something, then you try to fill in that gap. It's a huge open door for irrational behavior to start and to really come into a decision or a conversation. So the moral of the story is to not be afraid of uncertainty. Uncertainty is something that we should embrace and something that goes along with rationality. You can't be afraid of uncertainty and be rational. You have to really kind of combine those two things together and understand they come as a pair. So when you're feeling overly confident about a belief, I hope you remember this video and think to yourself, maybe I should go look at a new perspective. If you want more information about these kinds of topics, about rationality, how to develop these skills, make sure to subscribe here at Atlas.